The train sped through the vast American desert, cutting across the arid landscape with unstoppable force. Inside the cabin, the engineer focused on the endless tracks ahead. Just another routine journey. But then, something unexpected appeared. On the rails, a herd of wild Mustangs stood directly in the train's path. Brakes screeched, metal groaned, and dust exploded into the air as the massive locomotive struggled to slow in time. But the horses didn't move. They weren't startled or running. It was as if they were guarding something. The engineer's heart pounded as the train came to a final grinding halt. When he looked closely at what lay in the middle of the herd, he froze because what he saw was something he'd never forget. The sun blazed over the dry, cracked earth. A pale, cloudless sky stretched endlessly above the desert. The metal rails shimmered in the heat, running in a straight line through the desolate train. Inside the locomotive's cabin, Jack Reynolds, a seasoned train engineer with years of experience, wiped sweat from his brow, keeping his eyes fixed on the horizon. He'd seen wild Mustangs before, running free through these lands. It was always an awe-inspiring sight. But today, something felt different. A dense cloud of dust had risen ahead on the tracks. Jack narrowed his eyes, gripping the controls tightly. As the train approached, he began to make out shapes moving through the haze. Then his breath caught a herd of Mustangs was standing motionless on the tracks. At least 10 adult horses formed an unyielding barrier, their ears pointed toward the train, muscles tense, nostrils flaring. Jack instinctively blasted the horn, expecting the loud sound to scatter them. But they didn't budge. Something was wrong. As the train thundered closer, Jack squinted past the wall of horses, and then he saw it. Something was lying across the rails right in the center of the herd. Jack's heart pounded. He slammed on the emergency brakes. The train shuddered, metal screaming against metal. Sparks flew from the wheels. The cabin rattled as the locomotive struggled to stop in time. The Mustangs stood their ground. Dust exploded into the air, coating the parched desert floor. The engine roared as it battled its own momentum, inching toward the herd. Jack held his breath. Would it stop in time? With one final jolt, the train lurched to a halt. For a moment, silence. Only the wind whistled through the open plains. Jack exhaled sharply, heart racing. He had never seen anything like this. Hands trembling, he pulled the brake lever to lock the train in place and pushed open the cabin door. The sun's heat hit him instantly. His boots crunched against gravel as he stepped forward cautiously. The Mustangs hadn't moved. They held formation, standing protectively over something. Jack swallowed hard and edged closer. The horses watched him warily but didn't retreat. Then he saw what they were guarding. Lying helplessly between their legs, right on the tracks, was a small, injured foal. Jack's breath caught. The little horse's sides rose and fell weakly. Its legs trembled. Each time it tried and failed to stand. It was clear if the train hadn't stopped, the foal wouldn't have survived. Jack stood frozen, mind racing. The Mustangs knew exactly what they were doing. They hadn't simply blocked the tracks, they had protected one of their own. His heartbeat roared in his ears. The herd still didn't move. Their powerful bodies formed a living shield round the young one. Their eyes locked on Jack, muscles tight, nostrils flaring. He knew wild horses were unpredictable, protective, and fiercely loyal. One wrong move, and they could react aggressively. But the foal was in bad shape. Its small body trembled with exhaustion. Its sides heaved with short, labored breaths. A fresh gash ran down its hind leg. Dried blood streaked with dust clinging to its golden coat. It had likely collapsed trying to keep up with her. And now it was too weak to move. Jack's mind raced. The train couldn't move forward without putting the foal in danger. But approaching the herd too closely could be risky. He had to act fast. Taking a deep breath, Jack slowly raised both hands, trying to show the Mustangs he meant no harm. His voice was calm, steady, and gentle. Now, he murmured, taking a careful step forward. One of the lead stallions, a massive black Mustang with scars across his muzzle, snorted loudly and stepped in Jack's path. Jack froze. The stallion wasn't attacking, but he wasn't backing down either. Jack could sense the intelligence in the horse's eyes, the raw, Primal instinct of a wild animal hardened by the desert. This wasn't just fear. The Mustangs didn't trust humans. Jack sighed and glanced at the foal again. Its ears flicked at the sound, but it didn't lift its head. Time was running out. Jack turned slightly toward the train, looking for help. That's when he noticed his radio sitting on the cabin steps. Slowly, carefully, he stepped back and grabbed it. Pressing the button, he spoke in a low voice. "Dispatch, this is Reynolds. We've got a situation. A herd of Mustangs is blocking the tracks, and they're protecting an injured foal." A static filled. Pause, then the dispatcher's voice crackled back. "Repeat that, Jack. Did you say a foal?" Jack exhaled. "Yeah, a young one. It's hurt, and the Mustangs won't leave its side." Another pause. "What's your plan?" Jack glanced at the foal again. Its breathing was growing weaker. He had no idea what the plan was, but one thing was clear: he had to earn the trust of these wild horses before it was too late. Jack stood frozen, gripping the radio tightly. The Mustangs hadn't moved. The black stallion, the leader, held his ground, eyes locked on Jack with a gaze that sent a chill down his spine. He wasn't just defending the foal. He was warning Jack. Jack exhaled slowly, keeping his movement steady. He'd been around horses before, but these weren't domesticated animals. These were wild Mustangs, untamed, unpredictable, and untouched by human hands. Yet they were still here, still standing, still protecting the injured foal. Jack could see the fatigue in the stallion's stance. The herd had likely run for miles searching for safety, only for the youngest among them to collapse right on the railroad tracks. If Jack didn't act soon, the foal wouldn't survive the heat much longer. His radio crackled. "Jack, what's the situation now?" Jack raised the device to his lips. "Still the same. They're not moving, and I don't think they will. Do you need backup?" Jack hesitated. If more people arrived, the Mustangs might panic. Loud trucks or emergency responders could trigger a stampede, deadly for the foal. "No," Jack finally said. "Too risky. Let me try something first." He clipped the radio to his belt and took a cautious step forward. The stallion snorted again, pawing at the ground. Dust kicked up around his hooves. The other Mustangs edged in. Jack stopped. He had to show them he wasn't a threat. Slowly, he took off his hat and crouched, lowering himself to their level. In the calmest voice he could manage, he spoke. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." The Mustangs twitched their ears, uncertain. Jack reached for the only thing he had, his canteen. He unscrewed the cap and poured a thin stream of water into his hand. The desert air drank it quickly, but he held his hand out. The foal's ear flicked. It was watching. For a long moment, the herd remained still. Then, the foal tried to move. It barely lifted its head, too weak to rise, but Jack saw the desperation. The Mustangs saw it too. The stallion flicked his tail, glancing at the young horse. Jack seized the moment. "I can help," he said softly, "but I need you to let me." The black stallion snorted again, eyes shifting between Jack and the foal. It was a test. Jack knew that in the wild, trust wasn't given. It had to be earned. Carefully, he took another step, then another. The stallion didn't move. The Mustangs stayed tense, but they didn't stop him this time. Jack finally reached the foal. Up close, its condition was worse than he feared. Its ribs were visible through its dusty coat. The wound on its hind leg was swollen and crusted with dried blood. Flies buzzed around its ears. Its breathing was weak and uneven. Jack knelt down slowly, placing a hand on the foal's neck. The herd stirred but didn't charge. Jack poured a few drops of water into his palm and gently touched them to the foal's mouth. The young Mustang barely responded. Then Jack felt it. A tiny movement. The foal's lips brushed his palm. It was weak, barely noticeable, but it was. Drinking. Jack let out a shaky breath. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Above him, the stallion watched. Jack knew what came next would decide everything. The herd had given him a chance. Now he had to prove they hadn't made a mistake. He could feel the heat radiating from the foal's body, dehydrated, exhausted, barely holding on. The desert sun hung high overhead, burning everything beneath. The metal rails of the tracks shimmered like molten silver, and even the Mustangs, though powerful and built for survival, were starting to show signs of fatigue. But they wouldn't leave. They remained in formation, standing guard over the injured foal, watching Jack's every move. Jack's mind raced. He had gained their trust, but now what? He knew he couldn't just lift the foal and walk away. The Mustangs might see that as a threat, even an act of aggression. They had given him space, but they weren't fully convinced, and Jack wasn't sure how much longer the foal could last. Carefully, he reached for his radio, pressing the button. He kept his voice low. "Dispatch, I need an emergency water supply." A pause. Then, "Jack, are you sure you don't want backup?" He looked at the Mustangs, silent, unmoving, waiting. Bringing in a rescue team might send them into a panic. If the herd stampeded, the foal wouldn't survive. "No backup," Jack said firmly. "Just the water." "Copy that. We'll get it to you ASAP." Jack clipped the radio to his belt and turned his attention back to the foal. It was barely responsive now. Its breathing was shallower than before, and its small body trembled even while lying motionless on the tracks. Jack couldn't wait. He poured the last of his water into his hands and gently touched the foal's muzzle again. This time, there was no response. Jack felt a cold panic creep into his chest. "No, no. Come on, kid," he muttered, running. A hand over the foal's neck. "Stay with me." Then movement. The foal's ear twitched slightly. It was faint, but Jack clung to that tiny sign of life. The stallion huffed loudly, shifting his weight. The herd was growing restless. Jack understood they were afraid. This foal was one of their own. If it died, they would mourn, and yet, they were still trusting him to do something. Jack knew he had only one option left. Slowly, he removed his outer shirt, rolling it into a makeshift sling. He knew if he tried to lift the foal too quickly, the Mustangs might misinterpret his actions as aggression. So, he moved slowly, deliberately giving them time to see what he was doing. But the moment he slid his arms under the foal's fragile body, the stallion reacted. The black Mustang snorted loudly and stomped a hoof, lowering its head. Jack froze. The entire herd tensed, their bodies coiled like springs. Jack locked eyes with the stallion. The energy between them was raw, electrica. Moment of pure instinct. Jack wasn't a threat. He wasn't a predator. He was trying to save their foal. The stallion snorted again, but didn't move forward. Jack swallowed hard and tightened his grip on the foal. Then, with one slow, steady motion, he lifted it off the ground. The foal was light to light for a horse its size, malnourished, weak. Its head lolled against Jack's chest as he carefully stepped backward. Cradling the small body in his arms, the Mustangs watched, completely silent. Jack took another step, then another. The stallion pawed the ground once, then stepped aside. Jack's breath caught in his throat. The herd was letting him pass. They had made their decision. Jack turned and began walking toward the train, carrying the foal in his arms. Behind him, the Mustangs stood still, watching, waiting. Jack knew what they were thinking. Would they ever see their foal again? And more importantly, would it survive? The foal's breathing was still shallow and uneven. Every second that passed felt like a gamble, life or death. Hanging in the balance. Jack clenched his jaw. He had to keep this little one alive. The roar of an approaching truck rumbled in the distance. A cloud of dust rose from the desert road. As the supply vehicle finally arrived, Jack didn't wait for it to fully stop before rushing forward. A crew member jumped out, holding two large containers of fresh water. "Where is it?" the man asked. Jack motioned toward the train platform. "There. We don't have much time." The worker sprinted over while Jack grabbed a damp cloth and knelt beside the foal. Carefully, he dabbed cool water along its neck and chest, just enough to regulate its temperature without shocking its system. The foal shuddered, but didn't resist. Jack poured a tiny stream of water into his cupped hand and brought it to the foal's lips. The young horse's ears twitched, then a flicker of movement. The foal's tongue touched the water, then weakly lapped at it. Jack felt his chest tighten. It was working. He let out a slow breath, relief washing over him. "It's drinking," Jack murmured. The crew member handed him a small portable bowl. Jack carefully tilted it forward, letting the water reach the foal's lips. Another slow sip, then another. The foal's breathing was still weak but steadier than before. Jack glanced toward the horizon. The Mustangs were still there, still watching, waiting. The black stallion hadn't moved, neither had the others. They were waiting for their foal to come back. Jack knew what he had to do. He turned to the crew member. "It's stable enough, but it's not safe here. We need to get it back to the herd." The man hesitated. "Are you sure? What if they react badly?" Jack looked at the Mustangs again. Their stance wasn't aggressive. It wasn't fearful. It was hopeful. "They'll know," Jack said firmly. "They'll know I'm bringing it back." He carefully scooped the foal into his arms once again, feeling its tiny body pressed against his chest. Then, without another word, he started walking back toward the waiting Mustangs. Jack could feel the foal's heartbeat weak, unsteady, fading. Every step he took away from the train and toward the herd felt heavier, the weight of responsibility pressing against his chest. The Mustangs didn't follow. Jack glanced over his shoulder. They were still standing near the tracks, watching in complete silence. The black stallion was at the front, his body tense, nostrils flaring. Jack knew what he was thinking. Bring our foal back. The sun blazed mercilessly overhead, and Jack could feel the heat radiating from the foal's frail body. He had to move fast. Just then, the dispatcher's voice crackled through the radio at his hip. "Jack, we've got water on the way. ETA. 10 minutes. 10 minutes might be too long." Jack didn't respond. Instead, he climbed up onto the first platform of the train, still cradling the foal in his arms. His mind raced through everything he knew about horses. Cooling down too fast could send the foal into shock. Not cooling down fast enough could kill it. He needed a solution now. His eyes darted to the small emergency water reserve in the train's cabin. Not much, but enough. Jack carefully lowered the foal onto a makeshift bed made from his jacket and unscrewed the cap of the water bottle. He poured a small amount into his palm and gently brought it to the foal's mouth. Nothing. Jack's stomach twisted. "Come on, kid, stay with me," he whispered. He dipped his fingers in the water and ran them along the foal's cracked lips. A flicker of movement. Jack's heart pounded. Then, the foal's tongue barely moved, just enough to take in the moisture. It was drinking. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Jack sighed in relief. But he knew the foal needed more than water. Its breathing was still, weak, and its small body trembled with every rise and fall of its ribs. The dispatcher's voice crackled again. "Jack, are you there?" Jack grabbed the radio. "Yeah, the foal is alive, but barely. Where's that water?" 2 minutes out. Jack exhaled sharply, brushing a hand over his face. 2 minutes. He turned his head, looking back toward the Mustangs. They hadn't moved. They were still standing there, unmoving, watching him. The stallion shifted slightly, as if waiting for Jack's next move. Jack swallowed hard. They weren't going anywhere, and somehow he understood why. They weren't just watching. They were hoping, waiting for proof that their foal was still alive, waiting to see if Jack would keep his promise. Jack set the radio down and turned back to the foal. It wasn't giving up yet, and neither would he. Jack's boots crunched against the dry desert ground as he walked, carrying the fragile foal in his arms. The Mustangs stood in the distance, still waiting. The black stallion at the front lifted his head slightly, his muscles tense. Jack's breath was slow and steady. He wasn't just returning a foal. He was returning a piece of their family. The foal shifted weakly in his arms, its small body a little stronger now, its breathing less labored. Jack didn't stop. He kept walking, and the Mustangs didn't move. When he was close enough, Jack hesitated. The stallion snorted, pawing the ground, his dark eyes locked onto the foal, ears flicking forward. The herd remained silent, as if holding their breath. Jack knelt down carefully, heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the foal's warm breath against his arm. Then, in one gentle, deliberate motion, he lowered the foal to the ground. For a moment, it didn't move. The foal's legs trembled as it tried to find its balance. Its ears twitched. Then, it lifted its head. The herd stirred. The black stallion took a step forward, his nostrils flaring. Jack slowly backed away, giving them space. The foal blinked, ears perking up at the sound of its family nearby. Then, with a small, uncertain movement, it took its first step. The stallion let out a deep, powerful huff, A mare from the herd, probably the foal's mother, stepped forward, her muscles trembling with anticipation. Jack held his breath. Then, the foal took another step. The mother closed the gap between them and lowered her head, touching her muzzle gently to the foal. Jack felt something tighten in his chest. The foal let out a soft, breathy whimper, a sound of recognition. The mare nuzzled the foal, encouraging it to stand stronger. Jack could see it now. The foal was home. The stallion tossed his head back, releasing a deep, resounding neigh. The other Mustangs moved in closer, forming a protective circle around the young one. The black stallion's eyes flicked to Jack one last time. Jack didn't need words to understand. "Thank you." Then, without hesitation, the stallion turned, gave one final huff, and led the herd back into the wild. Jack watched as the Mustangs disappeared into the vast, open desert, their tails flicking, their bodies moving in perfect harmony beneath the golden sunset. The foal, now surrounded by its family, took off at a slow, steady trot, staying close to its mother. Jack exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face, his heart still racing. The train was still waiting. The crew was still watching. But in that moment, nothing else mattered. The Mustangs were free. The foal had survived. And Jack had witnessed something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. The silhouettes of the herd faded into the horizon, swallowed by the golden sky. The foal, once helpless, was now strong, free, and back where it belonged. Jack took one last look before turning back to the train, knowing he had just witnessed something truly extraordinary. Some bonds can't be broken. Some instincts never fade. And sometimes, the wild teaches us more than we could ever teach it. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who loves incredible true stories like this one. Let's keep spreading the power of courage, trust, and the untamed beauty of wild horses.